Welcome back. Now, the University of South Africa, or UNISA's College of Human Sciences Africa Speaks lecture series starts today. Previous speakers included the likes of Professor Achille Mbembe and Prof Wole Soyinka. Today's guest speaker will be Professor Xolela Mangcu from the University of Cape Town, who is also an author and public commentator. The lecture is entitled Transforming the South African University. He'll speak to us about issues of transformation in South African universities, or the lack thereof, some might say. Professor Mangcu joins us now from our Pretoria studios. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much again for your time.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Why the focus on transformation in South African universities?
Well, because the numbers are appalling. Our universities in many ways retain the features that they had under apartheid. There have been some changes, there have been some significant changes in terms of the student numbers, although that is not sufficient. But when it comes to the professors in some of our mainly white universities, the numbers are just appalling, and you cannot have a society in which the majority of the people are so underrepresented in institutions of higher learning.
20 years into our democracy, why do you think that still is?
Well, frankly, black people, the ANC, the people who took over this country, made a strategic error, a strategic mistake that I think would have been blindingly obvious to somebody like Steve Biko, which was to mistake or to confuse political power with cultural power. And cultural power is far more fundamental to the structuring of any society than political power. You can pass all the laws that you want, but the people who actually interpret your laws and the people who actually enforce your policies, the people who run your country on a daily basis are the people who have the cultural power. And those people are produced by the universities. Universities ration out the jobs in modern society. And it is what people learn at universities that shapes how they shape society.
One school of thought may argue that the problem extends far before even one gets to university, that as South Africans, we don't have a culture of reading. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa going on a drive to encourage young South Africans to read. Many people lamenting the fact that we don't have the academics and the great thinkers anymore, that this is a cultural problem that we have in the country. So my question to you is, who should be driving that transformation in universities?
Well, first of all, this was not always the case in the black community. First of all of those things are true. We need to do as much as we can to promote the culture of reading and learning in the black community. And it was not always like this. It's only in the past 20 years, which is a sad reflection, frankly, of how we have managed our transition to democracy, that this anti-intellectual culture has taken place. Who has responsibility for this? Of course, at the universities are a whole range of actors. I mean, the university councils have the ultimate responsibility, of course, for university policies. So the buck stops with them. But you've got, leaders like the vice chancellors of universities. But where the problem ultimately lies is within departments. Because in universities, departments have got what's called departmental autonomy. So they really exist as fiefdoms. And for as long as departments don't think that they need black people or they need women, it's very hard to change the makeup of the universities. So something has to happen in the hearts and minds of our colleagues in the departments.
The issue of redress in and of itself, regardless of which institution or which department it finds itself, is a bit of a thorny issue. Minority groups assuming that with the inclusion of more black people in universities or in any sphere of society, it will come at their detriment. Mothers and fathers saying that their children are already not receiving spaces in university because previously disadvantaged youngsters are given preference. So my question to you up next is, in an ideal university, how would you like to see things play out? What sort of demographics would you prefer to see?
First of all, how can that be? There are no blacks in the universities in the first place. There are no black professors in the universities. Black professors in South Africa make up only about 10%. So how can that be a threat to white people? It's white people who have 90% of the positions. So that's absurd. And in terms of the numbers, black students in many of these universities, black South African students in particular, African students, make up perhaps a quarter of the student population in these universities. So how can that be a threat? So, you have these exaggerated fears that are always put up whenever we have to change the way we are, change our institutions in this country. And we should not entertain them, quite frankly, because they are bogus. They are not based on numbers. The numbers tell a different story of black underrepresentation, particularly in the professoriate.
The role of socio-economic factors in keeping undergraduates in school or in university to make sure that they go to postgraduate, your honors, your masters, your PhD levels, the role that socio-economic factors play. Let's discuss that a little bit. Many of those who are receiving financial aid from government, perhaps a loan from NSFAS, they sometimes have to take that money and subsidize their family members who are in rural areas. They are buying groceries for their family. They are unsupported in the tertiary institutions at which they stay. Let's speak a little bit about socioeconomic factors and the role that perhaps plays in the lack of PhD professionals that are black in South Africa.
Well, I mean, there's no question that there are socioeconomic factors that inhibit other people, from pursuing academic careers. But often enough, that's really an excuse. For people who want to have high standards of living, for people who want to basically pursue particular lifestyles. And then they say, you know what, I cannot go to a university because I cannot afford a Mercedes-Benz, or I cannot have a mansion. But if people were to actually look at what it is that is appropriate for us to have meaningful lives, then the salary that you get at the university would be enough for people to actually support their families. Not everybody would be able to do that, but I feel that argument is often used by people who confuse their aspirations for particular lifestyles with what needs to be done, which is the serious work that the country needs in terms of its intellectual development.
Prof, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for allowing us to pick your brain. But before you go, could you give us a little more detail of the Africa Speaks lecture, please?
Oh, I'm honored actually to be following in the footsteps of people like Wole, Soyinka and Achille, Mbembe, who are trailblazers in Africa. And UNISA is hosting has been hosting this series, Africa Speaks, and I'm just privileged to be following in the footsteps of those guys. Open to the public? Open to the public, and it starts today at 10 o'clock at UNISA.
Thank you so very much for your time. I trust that you received as much food for thought as I did. Prof, my thanks again to you. Quick ad break. Morning Live continues after this. Stay with us.